Harry's Wife, Part 103.18. Archetypes. I'm not Duchess difficult. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. We return to the New York Post with an article by Brooke Steinberg, headed, Harry's Wife Slams Duchess Difficult Label. I make a choice to be grounded. Yes, more industrial beige as she flaps her gums, trying to convince everybody else that she's grounded and particular, not realising that her behaviour is actually entitled, demanding and bullying. The New York Post tells us, Harry's wife is shutting down the Duchess Difficult Label, nullification of threat to control. The nickname, which was first coined by the Daily Express, began after rumours swirled in 2018 that Harry's wife had dictatorial behaviours, sense of entitlement, like sending emails at the crack of dawn. I wonder what Dawn would have to say about that, finding the emails were being fired at her crack, and causing an aide to quit. Now she's taking to her podcast, Arsey Wipes, to hit back. On the latest episode, titled Upending the Angry Black Woman Myth, the Duchess of Sussex discussed the need for her to set boundaries, which actually means assert control, but her narcissism prevents her from seeing that. You're allowed to set a boundary. You're allowed to be clear, the 41-year-old royal stated. That does not make you demanding. It does not make you difficult. It makes you clear. Yes, of course. What is this I see before me? It is a festering turd. No, I shall describe it as a beautiful red rose. Just because you call it that, Harry's wife, doesn't mean it ain't so. But of course, in her deluded world, what she describes it as, it is, because after all, it is her truth. It is her genuine perception. And that's why it's so confusing for her. She's not particularly bright, but it's confusing for her because she can't understand why other people can't grasp that I'm not a bully, I'm just asserting a boundary. I'm not demanding, I'm just being particular. She doesn't sit there or stand there thinking, I know I've just bullied the arse off that person, but I'll now hide behind the label of being particular. No. She honestly believes that that's what she is. And if you were to say to her, do you realise, Harry's wife, that your behaviour is bullying? She'll go, no. I'm allowed to be clear. That doesn't make me demanding. That's not bullying. But everybody else would see it as. And that's why when she strenuously denies allegations of bullying, she doesn't do it thinking, I know I've bullied them, but fuck it, I'm going to deny it anyway. No. She seriously believes that she hasn't engaged in this behaviour because of the distortion field, which is her narcissism, because that's how it works, and it has to be that way in order to enable her to get to the prime aims, causes her to fail to see what her behaviour actually is when viewed by the shared reality of other people. Harry's wife, returning to the article, said she makes a choice to be grounded because things are going to be said no matter what she does. In other words, assertion of control by saying, what you say about me doesn't affect me, although we all know that it does. She reminisced on watching Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first black woman to serve on the Supreme Court, triangulation of person, being sworn into the bench, remembering how the judge showed restraint during the hearings. Character trait acquisition, she likens herself to that judge by basically thinking, I show restraint notwithstanding the repeated baiting that I experience, failing, of course, to realise that people aren't baiting her, they're simply criticising her for what? Her behaviour. Harry's wife's guest on Tuesday's episode, talk show host Ivy Famudo, praised Jackson for doing a wonderful job handling the hearings. There is a pressure, I think, to do that not just for herself, but to do that for all of us, the Duchess responded, which is the same way you're carrying yourself, and I think you make a choice. You make a choice to be grounded as possibly what we share because of all the things that are going to be said, no matter what, she continued as the beige dribbled from her mouth. Harry's wife also confessed to Famudo that she finds herself cowering and tiptoeing into a room out of fear of being perceived negatively in a workplace situation. I touched on that in episode 0.17. Revision of history, and I'll also be providing you with the evidence that shows just how she tiptoes and cowers into rooms in a later video today. Famudo shared that a colleague described her as very particular, and that she took it as a compliment, to which Harry's wife responded, "You're allowed to be particular." Do you hear that, everybody? You're allowed to be particular, because Harry's wife said so. She is the grand arbiter of all behaviours, judge of everybody, and she says you are all now allowed to be particular. Well, if we adopt her version of particular, that means that you can go around bullying people, it would appear. The article continues, women in the workplace, how you show up in the workplace, how you're conceived, misconceived or portrayed, you can receive it that way. But if he describes you that way to someone else, they go, oh, what does that mean? Well, it's precisely what my brain is saying at the moment, meaning, oh, what the fuck are you going on about now? Once again, we're treated to the I think a high tide raises all ships, she continued. We're all going to succeed. You're not. You're on the downward spiral. So let's make sure it's really great because it's a shared success for everybody. Yes, that's right, Harry's wife. Your version of shared success is this. Treat the Reitman's shoot staff badly, making the manicurist cry. Throwing pelters at a 96-year-old lady who is mourning the loss of her husband. Throw pelters at a 96-year-old lady with regard to other members of her family. Ostracize your own extended family. Forget about your childhood friends. Turn your back on the Suits cast. How many of them turned up at your wedding? How many were invited? Yes, all of these ships, they're all rising with yours, aren't they? They've not been left behind and forgotten about, dumped on the shelf, or even disengaged from. Oh, no, 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 no. The royal family, your own family, the cast from the Reitman's shoot, the Buckingham Palace staff that you bullied, the 3-year-old girl that you bullied, former friends, former colleagues. I can just see all of their ships rising. No, I can't. I see them all as hollowed-out wrecks left behind on the shoreline as your ship pisses off into the distance. Harry's wife went on to tell Famudo that she has to remind herself to just say the thing that you need. Oh, how good of you. The thing I find most embarrassing is when you're saying a sentence. Well, I think what you ought to say is, the thing I find most embarrassing is whenever I open my mouth. But of course you won't, because you think everything that comes out of it is of moment and so important. The thing I find most embarrassing is when you're saying a sentence and the intonation goes up like it's a question, Harry's wife confessed, and you're like, oh my God, stop, stop, like whispering and tiptoeing around it. Yeah, sure. Is anybody taken in by all of this flannel? Well, let's find out in the comment section as always, as we dip briefly below the line to find out. Let's go, Brandon. There are women who suffer from borderline personality disorder, which is characterized as a person who thrives on chaos and excessive drama to a point where they alienate every living being around. Psychiatrists even avoid treating people with this disorder as there's no cure for it, only wasted time and energy. Harry's wife is a classic example of borderline personality disorder. She's a narcissist, but that person at least recognizes the behaviors are problematic. Anna1452 responds to that. Not sure she is borderline. Borderline's hallmark feature is going apeshit when they perceive they are being abandoned, which, as I've explained in my video, the borderline is just actually another form of narcissism because it's a threat to control. Anna continues, Harry's wife doesn't care about anyone else. I don't think her issue is abandonment, but a massive ego as a defence for being a homely kid from a somewhat dysfunctional family and lusting for being one of the cool kids. She became a bossy, manipulative little bitch to get her needs met. Lola, women in the workplace, how you show up in the workplace, how you're conceived, misconceived or portrayed, you can receive it that way, but if he describes you that way to someone else, they go, oh, what does that mean? I'm not sure she meant to say conceived in that sentence. Perceived would have been more accurate to the workplace. But that aside, this makes that passage hard to understand. Did she actually trail off while speaking, or is that bad editing? I'm not listening to her to find out, but I find everything she says is just a bit off, like she's trying to put square blocks into round holes, trying to fit herself into a place where she just doesn't fit. Miss Travis responds to that. She likes to use words and idioms without knowing the meaning, like when she said she felt guttural and had a pit in her stomach. Jeffrey Miller, Nutmeg needs to prepare for her next and biggest PR stunt, which will hopefully be her last. When her heartbroken and abandoned father dies alone in Mexico, she'll have another opportunity to show how shallow and cold she is. I can so see her at his funeral, film crew in tow, dressed and dripping in jewels, as she sheds her signature single tear. A lesson that other grifter, Amber Heard, needs to learn. Susan Crawford, isn't it time to stop giving this aging actress any more attention? I'm sure some people care, but most people do not. Let me tell you, to most people, kindness, sincerity comes naturally. It's emotional empathy. If you have to work at being grounded, this is a major flaw. Come down to earth, Harry's wife. Your mind tells you something that you're not. You are not superior to anyone. Layla R., out of touch and always complaining. How is this being a role model? She's a legend, only in her mind. Say what? I've got news for her. She is not shutting down the Duchess difficult label. It's stuck on her forever. She is difficult and annoying and arrogant. Has nothing to do with whatever angry black woman syndrome is. Her podcasts are doing nothing to help people or dispel labels. It's just an avenue for her to air more of her perceived grievances, all the while getting gobs of money for it. Nice try, honey, but we all see exactly what you are. No amount of PR is going to change that. And that seems to me an apt point to end matters. People see her for what she is. Nothing's changing it. The tide very much has turned, and no matter how much she tries to protest against it, it's just not washing with people anymore. This is her downward spiral. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.